I'm Pastor Steve Talmage at Love of Christ Lutheran Church in Mesa, Arizona. Each week, Pastor Nanette Christofferson or I try to provide a brief introduction to two of the assigned Bible readings for Sunday. We're going to look at Sunday, July 26, 2026, 1 Kings 3, 5-12, which is our first reading, first lesson for that Sunday. We're at the end of David's reign in 1 Kings chapter 1. David is elderly, frail, no longer able to govern effectively. A succession crisis emerges. Adonijah, David's fourth son, attempts to seize the throne. Nathan the prophet and Bathsheba intervene, reminding David of his promise that Solomon would be king. David publicly declares Solomon as his chosen successor, ending Adonijah's attempted coup. But of course, you know that Adonijah is not going to be happy about this. David's final instruction. David charges Solomon to walk in God's ways and keep the covenant. The covenant of the Ten Commandments, the covenant of Abraham, blessed to be a blessing, a covenant to make sure an heir of David's line stays on the throne of Israel. David also instructs Solomon to deal with some unresolved political threats, Joab and Shimei. Joab is a general and Shimei is an opponent as well. And so the reality is that Solomon takes the throne in a time of crisis, whenever a beloved king dies, or whenever there's a transition in leadership, as we know in our own country's recent history. It is a challenge for peaceful transition without opposing forces at work to make it less than peaceful. Solomon acts to stabilize the kingdom. Adonijah makes another attempt to gain influence. Well, there's consequences. He's executed. Joab, David's former general, he's executed for past treachery, trying to promote, others and himself. Shimei is placed under restrictions and later executed for violating them. Political violence is nothing new under the sun. The reality of controlling and having power and maintaining, one's understanding of who should be in charge, particularly when you're using God's name as the one dictating who that is. You do what you have to maintain your position. Abiathar, the priest, is removed from office, fulfilling earlier prophecies. So it's like we have a whole new guard coming in to restabilize the kingdom following the death of the beloved King David, who wasn't perfect, was no saint by any means, but he did unite the 12 tribes. He did form the capital of Israel in Jerusalem, and he set the groundwork to be able to allow Solomon to build a temple to worship God. So the kingdom is finally secure. Solomon's throne is firmly established, not without great cost. Political rivals are gone. The kingdom is now unified and stable. Solomon is ready to begin his reign not as a threatened young king, but as a secure one. The spiritual context, Solomon's early devotion. 1 Kings 3:3, immediately before the dream at Gibeon, says, Solomon loved the Lord, walked in the statutes of his father David. However, let's put it in context. Worship is still taking place at the high places because the temple has not yet been built. So there were multiple sites where people would go and worship God, because they had no central base, central focus, which the temple would create, where you'd have the Holy of Holies, you'd have the Ark of the Covenant, you'd have the altar to offer the sacrifices. So with those high places are elements of other gods being worshipped besides Yahweh. Solomon goes to Gibeon, the most important high place, to offer sacrifices. So you can see on this little map, Gibeon's not that far from Jerusalem, but that has become the place where it was believed that was a more special high place to worship God, or more favored place to worship God. Now the table is set. Before 1 Kings 3, Solomon moves from a fragile, contested kingship to a secure, God-blessed reign, setting the stage for God to offer him the gift that will define his legacy, wisdom. verses 5 to 6. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today." Verses 7 to 9. "And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, although I'm only a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in, and your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this great people of yours?" 10 to 12. It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. God said to him, "Because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches or for the life of your enemies, but I've asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall rise after you." So let's break this up. Let's go through this and see how we might understand this. God appears at Gibeon. God appears to Solomon in a dream, a very common vehicle for spiritual, holy, godly things to be communicated. God invites Solomon, "Ask what I should give you." A rare moment where God initiates the offer, rather than, in most cases, we're always asking God, not listening for God to hear, "Ask me what you want." We're usually telling God what we want. It's a rare moment where God initiates the offer. It sets the tone for a relationship built on grace, not demand. God is the initiator here, which is a beautiful picture. And Solomon recalls God's steadfast love to David. Remember, David was no saint, but he was a man after the Lord's heart. And he did accomplish many, many things. And he did many righteous things in spite of his human frailty. David's faithfulness is remembered, but God's mercy is central. Solomon recognizes he stands on the foundation of God's past grace. His existence is a sign of that grace. For you might remember that Solomon's mother Bathsheba was impregnated by David, not on great circumstances. That David took great advantage of her, or maybe even raped her because of the power differential. It was not consensual. She was under the submission of the king to have sex with him. She gets pregnant. That baby dies, believed to be a consequence. It's a horrible consequence of David's action. But then God graces both David and Bathsheba by giving them another child, and that child is Solomon. And Solomon is the one given the promise to be on the throne. Verse 7, Solomon's humility. I'm only a little child. We're not looking at his birth certificate here. It's a confession of inexperience. It's not about age. He was probably 20, which is young, but there were younger kings. But it's about dependence. There's an actual humility here, acknowledging that I'm not all that. And sadly, when Solomon dies, we see that his own son, who follows after him, Rehoboam, he acts like he's the smartest guy in the world, and he makes bad decisions, listening to bad advisors, and the wisdom that Solomon is practicing somehow skipped a generation, because then we have civil war and the 12 tribes are never united really again. Solomon acknowledges he cannot lead without divine help. Wow, won't we love to hear that from our political leaders? True wisdom begins with humility. True wisdom begins with humility. Verse 8. Israel is described as a great people. Solomon sees the enormity of his responsibility. Leadership is framed as service, not privilege. Wow. Again, when we look at some of the leaders we have, leadership is framed as service, not privilege. He recognizes the people belong to God, not to him. Verse 9, Solomon's request for wisdom. He asked for an understanding mind, literally a listening heart. In Hebrew, the heart was the center of reason. He seeks discernment between good and evil. Wisdom is relational, listening to God and to the people. Wow! How about that, rather than just listening to myself? Solomon's request is for the sake of justice, not personal gain. Again, put this in the context of 21st century leadership that we see modeled. Verse 10, God's delight. God is pleased with Solomon's request. I love this little picture of this little girl. She's just so overjoyed. So God is so happy that Solomon asked for what he asked for. God's values, motives rooted in service and justice. Solomon's prayer aligns with God's heart for the people. It's a model prayer shaped by vocation, not self-interest. Boy, I wish all who are in positions of leadership would just read this chapter. Solomon did not ask for long life, did not ask for riches, did not ask for victory over enemies. These were typical royal desires in the ancient world. Solomon's restraint reveals spiritual maturity and covenant priorities. So God grants a wise and discerning mind, wise and discerning heart. Solomon becomes known for unparalleled wisdom, and shortly after this you will read the story of the two women with the two babies, and one dies, and Solomon being called to decide whose child is the one still living. God responds generously when requests align with God's mission. Wisdom is God's gift, given for the flourishing of the community. Key takeaway, Solomon's story teaches that leadership without wisdom becomes destructive. Power without discernment becomes dangerous. Success without humility becomes hollow. Wisdom is the one gift that makes all other gifts fruitful for the benefit of all, for the benefit of God's people. How does this apply? Solomon's request becomes a mirror for our own priorities. Do we seek comfort, control, achievement, security? Or do we seek the heart that listens to God? God bless you as you read this wonderful story and put it in the context of Solomon's transition into leadership, and as you apply it to the ways in which you lead in your daily life, as well as you look at other leaders in our world today, in our nation today, those in the church even. God bless you, and thanks for watching.